Okay, so it's Torah portion Ki Tisa this week. It's not teaser, like one that teases keys, as I'm sure I've called it before in the past. It's Ki Tisa. Obviously, we read Hebrew from right to left. So the way that I'd remember this looks like a backwards C, and we're reading it kind of backwards. So it's a K sound. And when you see a little dot underneath it, looks like the dot of an I. What's going on there? Looks like the dot of an I, and it is an I sound. And these floaty things are yods. So that's a ki there. This letter is a tav, and we've got another one of those dots. So it's ti, ki, ti. Then this is a sheen. Just kind of recognize that. It's quite memorable. The way I remember whether a sheen makes a s or a sh sound is S is the beginning of sh. And the thing that will tell you is this little dot at the top of the sheen. So if it's an S, the way we read English is obviously left to right. So if it's an S, the dot will be on that side. If it's the full sh, the dot will be on the other side of the sheen. That little T shape makes an A sound, and then that Hebrew letter there is an aleph, and it just takes on the sound of the vowel that comes before it. So it's Ki Tisa to pronounce it. And it means when you lift up, when you take. Tisa is the modified form of the verb nasa. Okay, and when we read, you shall not bear my name in vain, you shall not take my name in vain, you shall not lift up my name in vain, it could be. So nasa, when it's you take, second person, becomes tisa. So it's ki when tisa you take. And that'll be relevant as we go on. But lift up is probably the best translation in this sentence, and we'll see where that is. So in verse 11 of chapter 30 of Exodus, it says, And Yehovah spoke to Moshe, saying, When you take the census of the children of Yisrael to register them, then each one shall give an atonement for his soul to Yehovah when you register them, so that there is no plague among them when you register them. So what he's saying is, when you count the number of the children of Israel, anytime anyone counts the number of the children of Israel, you have to take from them an atonement for their souls. Everyone among those who are registered is to give this. So this is what they give for atonement: half a shekel, according to the shekel of the set-apart place. And as we'll see in a little bit, the shekel of the set-apart place actually in Hebrew just says shekel hakodesh. Okay, like we would have ruach hakodesh. Ruach being spirit, kodesh being holy, ha meaning the. So ruach hakodesh in Hebrew is the Holy Spirit. Shekel HaKodesh is the holy shekel, or the set-apart shekel. Here the translators have kind of maybe taken a bit of a liberty, and they've made it the shekel of the set-apart place. Place isn't actually there in the Hebrew, so it's just the shekel of the set-apart. So shekel HaKodesh is in the holy shekel. 20 gerahs being a shekel. Okay, we don't really know what a gerah is. We've got some idea of what a shekel is. The half shekel is the contribution to Yehovah. So they had to give half a shekel of silver for an atonement for their souls. And as we go through the book of Leviticus, we'll finish Exodus and we'll go through the book of Leviticus. We'll see about what atonement is. An atonement actually is for cleansing. Okay, it's when it's to do with his holy place, it's cleansing so that a holy God can come and dwell in a place which is unclean, like the world through sin is unclean. So they gave as atonement this half a shekel, and this half a shekel was actually used to build the house that Yehovah lived in. Okay, so the half shekel is the contribution to Yehovah. Everyone passing over to be registered from 20 years old and above gives a contribution to Yehovah. The rich does not give more, the poor does not give less than half a shekel when you give a contribution to Yehovah to make atonement for yourselves. Now, a couple of weeks ago, Charlie was looking at this idea of a shekel and how much it weighed, and he texted me at the time and he said, how much does a shekel weigh, something like that. I said, I don't know. He ended up looking on Google, and the amount that he found on Google was 250.2 grams, which is a bit of a mystery. Everywhere I looked on Google, it was between 8.3 and 11.5 grams. And I actually contacted Charlie and said, where did you find 250 grams? And he looked back and he couldn't find it. He couldn't find it on his history or anything like that. So maybe he'd read a different weight along with shekel on one side and then the weights on the others. I'm not sure, but it's not actually 250 grams because obviously quarter of a kilogram of silver is quite a lot. If you were given an eighth of a kilogram of silver as atonement, that would be quite a lot as opposed to 4 to 5.5 grams of silver. And you shall take the silver for the atonement from the children of Israel and give it for the service of the tent of meeting, and it shall be to the children of Israel for a remembrance before Yehovah to make atonement for yourselves. In Genesis 23, we get a little bit of an idea about what the shekel was that they were using. It says, Abraham bowed himself down before the people of the land, and the land where he was dwelling is the land of Canaan. He was a sojourner in the land of Canaan, which is modern-day Israel, and it was part of an area called Mesopotamia, and we actually know what the Mesopotamian shekel was. He spoke to Ephron in the hearing of the people of the land, saying, if only you would hear me, I shall give the amount of silver for the field. Take it from me, and let me bury my dead there. And Ephron answered Abraham, saying to him, my master, listen to me, the land is worth 400 shekels of silver. Now, obviously, Abraham didn't arrive and say, I am Abraham, man of God. I will tell you what a shekel is. He's using the currency that they're familiar with. And Ephron actually says it's 400 shekels. So Ephron is familiar with what a shekel is. What is that between you and me? So bury your dead. And Abraham listened to Ephron, and Abraham weighed out the silver for Ephron, which he had named in the hearing of the sons of Heth, 400 shekels of silver, currency of the merchants. That's how a shekel also functioned. A shekel wasn't just a coin. We're very familiar with currency in the form of, well, I'll pay you in a denomination of currency. A shekel was actually a weight. So he weighed out 400 shekels of silver rather than perhaps giving him 400 shekel coins, which he could have done. He weighs out the silver for him. So this is the area known as Mesopotamia, and you'll see it's north of the land of Israel. It's also west in the land of Egypt. That was Mesopotamia. So the children of Israel, when half a shekel is asked of them, they have just left the land of Egypt. So the shekel that they would have would probably have been the Mesopotamian shekel as far as I can figure out. We don't actually know how much it weighed. We've got some ideas from some historical sources, like the Mesopotamian shekel and something else I'll show you in a second. This is the Mesopotamian shekel. You obviously can't see how big it is from that. But I've actually got something which weighs about a shekel here. Charlie, would you mind? Okay, so this is about 1/4 of an ounce of silver. Okay, 1/4 of an ounce weighs 7.77 grams. The Mesopotamian shekel was 8.3 to 8.5 grams. Obviously, things that are really old, sometimes maybe they've lost weight, Maybe the shekels that they were using weren't quite the correct weight. We know the Lord is constantly saying to people, have honest weights and measures, because some of their weights would have weighed a little bit less. Some of them would have weighed a little bit more, depending whether you were buying or selling, if you're trying to cheat people a little bit. But they're the weights that we get, 8.3 to 8.5 grams. So it's very slightly more than a quarter ounce of silver. That's a shekel. So that little coin there, the amount of silver that we're talking about is about half as much as that coin. That's how much they're saying, give this as an atonement. And there were over 600,000 of them. So over 600,000 people giving half of that coin, or 300,000 people giving as much as that coin. That total quite a bit of silver that could be used. For the people who are online, that's the coin that I've just passed around. It's got a little inscription of Noah's Ark and the dove from Noah's Ark on the back of it. It's actually an Armenian coin. It's a modern coin. Okay, so this is a 2 shekel weight from the time of the Second Temple. It's a Herod's temple, and that is actually a modern day Israeli 2 shekel coin. I don't think that has any relevance to the weight, thank you. So the 2 shekel weight is actually 23 grams, which is 2 times 11.5. So a shekel would be somewhere between 8.3 and 11.5. Obviously, by the time they get round to the Second Temple, the weights could well have changed. We don't actually know. I think it's probably most likely they were using the Mesopotamian shekel at the time, though. I'd say almost definitely Abraham was. In Exodus 13, it says, "And it shall be when Yehovah brings you into the land of the Canaanites, as he swore to you and your fathers, and gives it to you, then you shall pass over to Yehovah, everyone opening the womb. Every firstborn that comes from your livestock, the males belong, to Yehovah. But every firstborn of a donkey you are to ransom with a lamb. If you do not ransom it, you shall break its neck." Okay, not advocating the breaking of the necks of the animals, just saying, listen, either you ransom it or you don't use it. It's not your animal. Every firstborn of a man among your sons you are to ransom. So Yehovah killed all of the firstborn in Egypt, and we're to ransom our firstborn to him. Okay, and we reckon that weight in shekels. We see in Numbers 15 to 16, it says, "Everyone opening a womb of all flesh, which they bring to Yehovah, whether man or beast, is yours. But the firstborn of man you shall certainly ransom, and the firstborn of the unclean beast you ransom." So it's not just donkeys, it's any unclean beast. And ransom the ransomed ones when 1 month old, because you can't offer an unclean beast to Yehovah, so you have to pay a ransom for it. You can't offer a child to Yehovah. No one's sacrificing their children. Oh, thank you. So you pay a ransom instead. The ransom here that's listed is 5 shekels of silver. So you're talking about 5 times as much silver as that. Okay, that is about that much silver. That's what you're talking. If you're talking Mesopotamian shekels, Charlie, would you mind? It's all right. Just pass it round. You don't have to pass it to everyone. Actually, Charlie, pass this one with it, because it's between the big coin and the little coin. And if you're going by the shekel of the Second Temple period, it was 2 of the big coins. So the amount that you're talking about is either 1 1/4 ounces of silver up to just under 2 ounces of silver. If it was me doing it, I would always say go with the larger amount, because this is what you're giving to the Lord. 2 ounces of silver, what you can do to find the price of silver is you can look at what's called the spot price of silver. The problem is, at the moment, the premiums that you pay on silver, which is the amount over spot price you've got to pay if you actually want to own the silver, are quite large. An ounce of silver is about $30, $25 to $30, depending spot price. The amount that you pay might be up to $35. So I would always say, find out how much it would cost you to buy the silver, and then give that much to the brethren. Okay, we can't give it to a priest. We only have Yeshua as our high priest, and he said, if you give it to the least of these, the brethren, you do to me. So that's what we would do. So it's somewhere between the big and small coin and the 2 big coins, but I would always go 2 ounces of silver, find out what it would cost to buy the silver, and either buy the silver or give the money that it would cost for the 2 ounces. So for the people who are online, it's somewhere between that which is 1.25 ounces and that which is 2 ounces of silver. As I say, silver around about 25 to 35 per ounce, depending on where you're buying it from, what they'll sell it for, and all sorts of other factors. So in Exodus 38, 25 to 28, it says, and the silver from the ones counted of the congregation was 100 talents and 1,775 shekels, according to the holy shekel. A beker, half a shekel for a head. So a beker is the name of half a shekel, half of one of those small coins, if it was the Mesopotamian shekel. According to the shekel of the set-apart place, for everyone passing over to those counted from 20 years old and above, for 603,550 men. So if that's how many people gave half a shekel, and it tells us that totaled 100 talents, 1,775 shekels, then we know that a talent is about 3,000 shekels. Okay, so when you read of a talent, it's about 3,000 of those little coins, approximately. That's another reason that we know that it wasn't 250 grams, because 3,000 times 250 grams would be about 750 tons. And when we know that they gave multiple talents of silver and gold, they weren't given 750 tons of silver and gold. That'd be more silver and gold than there was in the entire world at that time. What it actually works out as, if it's the Mesopotamian shekel, a talent of silver or gold, a talent weighs 25 kilograms. So that's what we're talking about when we're talking about a talent. The 100 talents of silver were for the casting of sockets of the set-apart place. The bases of the veil, 100 sockets from the 100 talents. So the sockets for the actual frame, which made the tabernacle, had a talent of silver, had about 25 kilograms of silver in them. 100 sockets from 100 talents, a talent for each socket. And of the 1,775 shekels, he made hooks for the columns, overlaid their tops, and made bands for them. So out of each talent, he made the socket, and then out of the other silver, he made all the other stuff. And this is what each one of them, giving that half shekel of silver, this is what it turned into in the tabernacle. Okay, you can see here, you might not be able to read it, but it's got the word that says shekel, shekel there, which isn't much use. We read the Hebrew. It says ber shekel there, in shekel hakodesh. So in the holy shekel is essentially what it says. Deuteronomy 30, 11 to 12 says, and Yehovah spoke to Moshe saying, when you take the census, okay, we know that in the Hebrew, when it's modified, it's Ki Tisa, but the root words are Ki Nasa. That's the word that we saw, to lift up, to bear up, to take. Rosh, however, doesn't mean census. So it's not when you take the census. What it actually says, Rosh, is the head. Okay, it's sometimes used of a leader or the head. It's talking about your head. So what it says, the literal translation of it is, when you lift up the heads of the children of Israel. Okay, your head is sometimes called a pole, P-O-L-L. And when you take a pole, you're counting the heads. When you lift up the heads of the children of Israel, and that's going to be relevant as we go forward, to register them, okay, to count them, in other words. So you're lifting up each one's head to count them. Each one shall give an atonement for his soul to Yehovah, that tiny piece of silver, when you register them, so that there is no plague among them when you register them. Okay, so if a count was to be done of the children of Israel, and they didn't give this bit of silver, which was eventually called the temple tax. It was used for the construction of the tabernacle, and then as they went forward, they would do a census every now and again. And whenever they did the census, it might have been every year actually, when they went up to the Feast of Sukkot, possibly, they would do a census. And because the Torah said you have to take a piece of silver every time you do a census, this was being used. We'll do a census and we'll take a bit of silver off everyone, and this became the head tax. In Exodus 38:26, we read it slightly differently. It says, a beker, half a shekel for a head. Okay, so when you lift up the rosh means head. Golgotha is another word which means head. It's a synonymous term. So half a shekel for a head, a Golgotha, a head or a skull, a Golgotha can mean. According to the holy shekel, for everyone passing over to those counted from 20 years old and above, for 603,550 men. That's how many there were when they were in the wilderness. If we look at the word Golgotha, okay, we'll see there, head, pole, it can mean skull or head is what it means. So when it was first said, it was when you lift up the heads. Then when it's said later in Exodus, it's half a shekel per Golgotha. Both of them can mean head. Golgotha can also mean skull. And Golgotha should be a word which is somewhat familiar to us. In John 19, verse 17, it says, and bearing his cross, he went out to the so-called place of a skull, which is called in Hebrew Golgotha. Okay, place of the skull, place of the Golgotha. This is where Yeshua went to make atonement for our souls. They were giving a piece of silver to make atonement. We know, and we'll go more into this as we go through Leviticus, but we've got what's done on the earth, which is for atonement or the cleansing of the flesh. What's done in the heavenly tabernacle, which is for atonement for your conscience. So what Yeshua was doing here at the place of the skull was making atonement for us in the heavenly sanctuary, the heavenly temple. In Matthew 17:24-27, we learn something very interesting. Okay, this tax that they're talking about here, this is the head tax that they would take from everyone. They count everyone, they do a census, they count everyone and take this tax from them. Not how it was originally intended, but this is what they were doing. When they came to Capharnaum, those who received the tax came to Kepha and said to Peter, Simon Peter, and said, does your teacher not pay the tax? And he said, yea. And when they came into the house, Yeshua spoke to him first, saying, what do you think, Simon? From whom do the kings of the earth take toll or tax? From their own sons or from the strangers? Peter then said to him, from the strangers. Yeshua said to him, then the sons are exempt, or the sons go free. So they're saying, do you not pay this head tax? And Yeshua said to Peter when he came back, Wait there, Peter. What about the kings of the earth? Do you think that they're taking tax from their sons? Is it from the sons or from the strangers? And Peter says it's from the strangers. But lest we cause them to stumble, Yeshua says, go to the sea, cast in a hook, take the fish that comes up first, and when you have opened its mouth, you shall find a piece of money. Take that and give it to them for me and for you. So presumably this was a shekel that was found in the mouth of the fish. And what we have pictured here is Yeshua providing supernaturally, if you like, the payment for the head tax. Okay, so we learn from this, kings of the earth don't take tax from sons, they take them from strangers. Peter says they take them from the strangers, and Yeshua says, okay, yeah, that's right, we're exempt from paying this tax, but unless we cause them to stumble, go and you'll find this piece of money in the mouth. So we learn that when it comes to this tax, which Yeshua pays for us and paid our ransom, the sons are exempt. Okay, when you are cleansed by Yeshua's blood and you walk by the word, you become a son and you're exempt. The strangers are not exempt, though, and that'll be important as we go forward. Ephesians 1:3-5 says, blessed be the Elohim and Father of our Master Yeshua Messiah, who has blessed us with every spiritual blessing in the heavenlies in Messiah, even as he chose us in him before the foundation of the world, that we should be set apart and blameless. That's the word amamos, which means tamim in Hebrew, to be blameless before him, spotless, blemishless before him in love, having previously ordained us to adoption as sons. So when we are cleansed, when we're set apart and cleansed and made blameless before Yeshua, we are adopted as sons. Galatians 3:26 also tells us, for you are all sons of Elohim through belief in Messiah Yeshua. And when it says sons, in Hebrew and Greek, when you're using the collective noun, the word that you use to refer to a group of things, it's the same word, the masculine word, which is used for sons or also children. Okay, so a mixed group of people would be called by the word sons as well in Hebrew and Greek. So it's children of Elohim, you could translate this as. 1 John 3:1-10 says, see what love the Father has given us, that we should be called the sons or the children of Elohim. For this reason, the world does not know us, because it did not know him. Beloved ones, now we are the sons of Elohim, and it has not yet been revealed what we shall be. But we know that when he is revealed, we shall be like him, for we shall see him as he is. And everyone having this expectation in him cleanses himself as he is clean. Okay, so we're cleansed by the blood of Yeshua, and then we wash ourselves in the water of the word to make sure that we stay clean. So this is what is expected of a child of Elohim. And when we're trying to discern who are the children of Elohim, this is what we would recognize in them. Everyone doing sin also does lawlessness, and sin is lawlessness. Sin is anomia. Sin is without law. Okay, if you wanted to translate it roughly into English, you could say sin is acting as if there is no law. Okay, it's being without law. And you know that he was manifested to take away our sins, and in him there is no sin. Everyone staying in him does not sin. Everyone sinning has neither seen him nor known him. Little children, let no one lead you astray. The one doing righteousness is righteous, even as he is righteous. The one doing sin is of the devil, because the devil has sinned from the beginning. For this purpose, the Son of Elohim was manifested to destroy the works of the devil. Everyone having been born of Elohim does not sin, because his seed stays in him, and he is powerless to sin, because he has been born of Elohim. In this, the sons of Elohim and the sons of the devil are manifest. Everyone not doing righteousness is not of Elohim, neither the one not loving his brother. So the ones who are exempt, the ones who go free, are the people who match this description. Okay, those people who do not make a practice of sin. In Revelation 7, 4-17, we see an interesting piece of information. Whenever a census of Israel is taken, whenever the heads of Israel are lifted up to be counted, this half shekel has to be paid. We know that the sons go free. Okay, we see in Revelation 7, it says, I heard the number of those who were sealed. Okay, so this is Israel being counted here. 144,000 sealed out of all the tribes of the children of Yisrael, or the sons of Yisrael. Of the tribe of Yehudah, 12,000. Of Reuven, 12,000. Gad, 12,000. Asher, 12,000. Naphtali, 12,000. Manasseh, 12,000. Shimon, 12,000. Levi, 12,000. Yissachar, 12,000. Zebulun, 12,000. Yosef, 12,000. Benjamin, 12,000. So those are people who are counted. As it turns out, those 144,000 are all people who will qualify as sons of Elohim. And we'll see that as we go on. So they're exempt, if you like. They go free. After this, I looked and I saw a crowd which no one was able to count. Okay, why would you not be able to count them? According to Scripture, because a ransom would have to be paid for them, for their souls. Out of all nations and tribes and peoples and tongues, standing before the throne and before the Lamb, dressed in white robes and palm branches in their hands, crying out with a loud voice, saying, deliverance belongs to our Elohim who sits on the throne and to the Lamb. And all the angels stood around the throne, and the elders and the four living creatures fell on their faces before the throne and worshipped Elohim. So these people are dressed in white, and they're saying deliverance or salvation belongs to Elohim and to the Lamb. Saying, Amen, the blessing, the esteem, the wisdom, the thanksgiving, the respect, the power, and the might to our Elohim forever and ever. Amen. This is what the elders and the four living creatures are saying. One of the elders responded, saying to me, who are these dressed in white robes, and where did they come from? Okay, so this big group that nobody can count, where did they come from? I said to him, Master, you know, and he said to me, these are those coming out of the great tribulation, and that word is thlipsis, as Charlie was looking at last week. Great tribulation or great pressing, you could translate it as. Having washed their robes and made them white in the blood of the Lamb. So two groups mentioned here. One group, okay, they qualify as sons. They go free. The other group, and they're all counted. The other group could not be counted, and we're told that they came out of the great tribulation. And they've washed their robes, and they've made them white in the blood of the Lamb. We saw a couple of weeks ago that those who are lukewarm are counseled to buy from Yeshua gold tried in the fire. But there are another group of people, okay, the sons who go free, who are the church of Philadelphia, those who follow his word. Because of this, they are before the throne of Elohim, serve him day and night in his dwelling place, and he who sits on the throne shall spread his tent over them. Okay, they will be part of the tabernacle. They shall hunger no more, neither thirst any more, neither shall the sun strike them, nor any heat. All of which are things that we read about in Revelation. Because the Lamb who is in the midst of the throne shall shepherd them and lead them to the fountains of waters of life, and the Elohim shall wipe away every tear from their eyes. So they're the people who went through the great tribulation, and the Lamb will lead them. The 144,000, we're told, they as sons, they follow the Lamb wherever he goes. So they didn't need to go through the great tribulation. In Deuteronomy 30:12, we read, when you lift up the head of the children of Israel, is what it says, they shall give an atonement for their souls, which we know that those who are sons, we saw what people who are sons look like, they are exempt when you register them, so that there is no plague among them when you register them. So what would happen if you counted them and you hadn't taken that atonement for their soul, or they weren't exempt from it, is that they would suffer a plague. In Revelation 18 verse 4, it says, and I heard another voice from the heavens saying, come out of her, my people, lest you share in her sins, and lest you receive of her plagues. And what is being spoken of here is the mother of all harlots, okay, Mystery Babylon. Okay, and she's the mother of other harlots as well. Very broad brushstrokes, you can think of harlots and those who commit adultery and fornication, spiritually speaking, are those who go after other gods. So you could say people who are in mainstream Christianity, even some Torah keepers, a lot of Torah keepers, in fact, they're to come out of these ways of spirituality, and the warning is lest you receive of her plagues. Come out and be sons, be exempt from this, so that you don't receive of the plagues. You have to pay the atonement to not to be counted. If you don't pay the atonement and you count yourself among Israel, as all of these people will be doing, they're counting themselves as God's people, then you will receive of the plagues. So the warning is, come out of her lest you receive of her plagues. In 2 Samuel 24, we see David took a census without taking this little piece of silver from each person. Okay, and we see what some of the plagues look like. God then came to David and informed him, and he said to him, should 7 years of scarcity of food come to you in the land, or would you flee 3 months before your enemies while they pursue you? Or should there be 3 days plague in your land? So the sort of things that would have come upon David, scarcity of food, fleeing from your enemies while they pursue you, or 3 days of plague, a plague being in your land, all of which are the sort of things that we read about in the book of Revelation. So what we want is, lest it be us in that position, we want to be sons, okay? We want to walk and follow the Lamb wherever he goes, as we'll read here that the 144,000 do. I looked and saw a lamb standing on Mount Zion, and with him 144,000 having his father's name written upon their foreheads. So we'll see one group of people in the end times who have the mark of the beast on their hand or on their foreheads. Here we've got the 144,000 who are sealed and protected from harm, and they have the name of the Father written upon their foreheads. Their name not necessarily being his actual name, but being his character, his authority, his fame, his reputation, who he is. I heard the voice out of heaven, like the voice of many waters and like the voice of loud thunder. I heard the sound of harpists playing their harps. And they sang a new song before the throne and before the 4 living creatures and the elders, and no one was able to learn that song except the 144,000 who were redeemed from the earth. Okay? They are those who were not defiled with women. They came out of Mystery Babylon, who was the mother of all harlots. They're not defiled with women. They came out of all that nonsense. For they are virgins. They are those following the Lamb wherever he leads them on. So we see the 144,000 following the Lamb wherever he leads them on. And they're the ones who are redeemed from the earth. They're the ones who are protected. Then you've got this other group who can't be counted, like the 144,000 obviously are. They can't be counted, but they will come to a place where they follow the Lamb. So you've got the difference between those who follow the Lamb and are protected, walk in his word, Church of Philadelphia, for example. And then you've got those who will come to follow the Lamb, having come out of great tribulation. In their mouth was found no falsehood, for they are blameless, they are tamim before the throne of Elohim. Okay, they are first fruits to Elohim. So any offering to Elohim would have to be amamos. It would have to be without blemish. It would have to be tamim. In Revelation 13, 15 to 16, we read this. And there was given to him to give a spirit to the image of the beast. So this is talking about the false prophet, or the second beast which comes up from the earth. That the image of the beast should both speak and cause to be killed as many as would not worship the image of the beast. And he causes all, both small and great, and rich and poor, and free and slave, to be given a mark on their right hand or upon their foreheads. So it says that it was given to him to give a spirit to the image of the beast. And the word used for image there, an image is kind of like a statue or something like that, a graven image. The word that's used, the Greek word, is used in the Septuagint when Daniel and his friends are all given the ultimatum: you either worship this image or you get thrown in the fire. We have something very similar happening in the end times here. Okay, the image of the beast will be given a spirit that he should both speak, and he would cause to be killed as many as would not worship the image of the beast, just as Daniel and his friends would have been killed if they wouldn't worship that image. So we've got something that's happening here at the time of the end. We know the 144,000 are good. They're safe. We also know that there's another group who will wash their robes in the blood of the Lamb, and they will come to follow Yeshua holy. They will come out of mystery Babylon and all of the other harlots. Revelation 12, 10 to 11 says, and I heard a loud voice saying in the heaven, now have come the deliverance, or the salvation, and the power and the kingdom of our Elohim, and the authority of his Messiah. For the accuser of our brothers, who accused them before our Elohim day and night, has been thrown down. And they overcame him because of the blood of the Lamb. Remember, those who came out of the great tribulation washed their robes in the blood of the Lamb. They overcame him because of the blood of the Lamb and because of the word of their witness. Remember that, the word of their witness. They did not love their lives unto death. So you've got this image of the beast, which is given power to speak and to cause as many as won't worship the image to be killed. Okay, and then you've got this group who overcome, and they didn't love their lives unto death. So when given the choice, worship the image of the beast or be put to death, these people do not love their lives unto death. In Revelation 20, verse 4, it says, I saw thrones, and they sat on them, and judgment was given to them. And the lives of those who had been beheaded. So they didn't love their lives unto death. And then you've got these people who are being beheaded. Why are they being beheaded? Because of the witness they bore to Yeshua. The other people who didn't love their lives unto death overcame because of the blood of the Lamb and the witness. So we know how those people who don't love their lives unto death die. They're beheaded. The witness they bore to Yeshua, and because of the word, again, the word of the witness of Elohim, and who did not worship the beast nor his image. So those who won't worship the beast are put to death. These people won't worship the beast. They're beheaded because of the word of their witness, the testimony of Yeshua. These people are beheaded because of the witness they bore to Yeshua, because of the word of Elohim. These are the same people given a choice. Take the mark of the beast, worship the beast, or die. You've got those who are sealed, the 144,000 who are exempt from paying the head tax. They're exempt from having their heads lifted up. Then you've got these people who are in the second group of believers, the ones who eventually make it, if you like, the ones who come out of the great tribulation, the ones that Elohim has to wipe all their tears away and they will no longer suffer. They're the ones who did not love their lives unto death, and they have their heads lifted up in a different way. They're not exempt because they're not sons. The 144,000, they follow the Lamb. They are sons. They are exempt. These are a second category who will come to follow the Lamb because of the great tribulation. If you like, the ones who bought gold refined in the fire as counseled by Yeshua, the ones who didn't come out of the harlots. For more information on that, people are really interested in the mark of the beast, I'd recommend this video. And for more on beasts and horns and all the rest of the stuff that you see in Revelation and Daniel, I recommend this teaching, because this will show you how to interpret prophecy by what the scriptures tell you that things mean, rather than having a private interpretation or using just that prophecy as an exposition of its own text. You use the whole Bible as an exposition of prophecy. And so this video will show you how to do that. In Luke 21, 25 to 36, it says, "And there shall be signs in the sun and moon and stars, and on the earth anxiety of nations and bewilderment at the roaming of the sea and agitation." So these are the things that we would expect to see in the end time: signs in the sun, moon, and stars, anxiety of nations, in bewilderment at the roaring of the sea, and agitation. Men fainting from fear and the expectation of what is coming on the earth. When they see what's coming on the earth, they faint in fear. "For the powers of the heavens shall be shaken. And then they shall see the Son of Man coming in a cloud with power and much esteem. And when these matters begin to take place, look up and lift up your heads, because your redemption draws near." Okay, so Yeshua counsels people at the time of the end to lift up their heads, to have their heads lifted up. He spoke a parable to them. He said, "Look at a fig tree and all the trees. When they've already budded, observing it, you shall know for yourselves that summer is now near." Look at a fig tree, you see the buds, you know that summer is coming. So you also, when you see these matters take place, know that the kingdom of Elohim is near. Load of matters that we don't see taking place, but maybe we will tomorrow. Okay, but when you see them, know that the kingdom of Elohim is near. "Truly I say to you, this generation shall by no means pass away till all of these have taken place." Now, people misunderstand this and they think he's saying to the people who were there with him at that time, this generation's not going to pass away until all these things have taken place. It's not what he's saying. He's saying when you see these signs, those things are about to take place. I tell you that this generation, the ones who are living, who see those signs, they will not pass away until all those things have taken place. It will be that close when you see those signs. "The heaven and the earth shall pass away, but my word shall by no means pass away. And take heed to yourselves, lest your hearts be weighed down by gluttony and drunkenness and worries of this life, and that day come on you suddenly." So he counsels those at the time of the end to lift up their heads, to not be led astray by all of these things, to lift up their heads and be counted as sons. "For it shall come as a snare on all those dwelling on the face of all the earth. Watch then at all times and pray that you be counted worthy to escape all this that is about to take place and to stand before the Son of Adam." Pray that you would be one of the 12,000 from each tribe, the 144,000 who are the ones who are counted worthy to escape from all of those things. Lift up your heads and be counted as sons. So verse 17 says, "And Yehovah spoke to Moshe, saying, And you shall make a basin of bronze with its stand, also of bronze, for washing, and you shall put it between the tent of meeting and the altar, and shall put water in it. And Aaron and his son shall wash from it their hands and their feet, when they go into the tent of meeting, or when they come near the altar to attend to burn an offering made by fire to Yehovah. They wash with water, lest they die. And they shall wash their hands and feet, lest they die, and it shall be a law forever to them, to him and his seed throughout their generations. So they had these things so they could wash and be clean when they came into the presence of Yehovah. Now, something that struck me as I was going through these verses, the things that are pleasing to Yehovah, the things that he surrounds himself with. You know, we saw a couple of weeks ago and last week about how his tabernacle is constructed. He's got all of these items in there, items made of bronze, copper, things of silver, things of gold, even wooden items, utensils. And they're all functional and they're all objects that have worth. And Yehovah in his house is surrounded by these things. And it put my mind on the track of things that are actually valuable in the world, things that have worth in the world, what has worth and what is worthless. Yehovah spoke to Moshe saying, take for yourself, and again look at these things, choice spices. You want 500 shekels of liquid myrrh. This is a valuable thing. Half as much, 250 of sweet-smelling cinnamon, and 250 of sweet-smelling cane. So these were things that had a lot of value in the more ancient world. Things like spices, things like incenses, they all had value, and they were the things that people counted as valuable. 500 of cassia, according to the shekel of the set-apart place, and a hin of olive oil. So the things that Yehovah asks for offerings to him, he asks animals, which would have been very valuable, of course, at the time. Grain is another thing, which is a real tangible thing, which has value. Olive oil, he's asking cinnamon and myrrh and all of these things. Things that he asks are things that the people would have to bring to him that would have been really valuable to them. I'm going to look a little bit in the third part at that kind of relationship with Yehovah, and when he asks of you things that are of value to you, he asks you to give them to him. So I'll look at that concept in the third part. You shall make from these a set-apart anointing oil, a compound blended, the work of a perfumer. It is a set-apart anointing oil. Okay, because it brings to mind the fact that the things that we value in the world as it is at the moment are not these things which are of value, or we don't value them as much. Yehovah values things like oil and wine, grain, as I say, all of these incenses. Things of value are made from them also by people with a degree of expertise, the work of a perfumer, these people who can do something with these raw materials which are of themselves of value and then make something beautiful from them. And we've kind of lost the connection somewhat to those things. Proverbs 21 verse 20 says, desirable treasure and oil are in the dwelling of the wise, but a foolish man swallows it up. And there's a couple of different ways that you can understand that. It works on a few different levels. When Yeshua speaks in his parables of things which are valuable, he's contrasting them with the word and with the kingdom of Elohim. So we hear of him saying that the wise virgins have oil in their lamps. They have this thing which is of value. You can also read it how perhaps many of the people who were reading these writings of Solomon would have read it as in things that are of value, you will find them in the dwellings of the wise. The foolish man, though, swallows it all up. He's eaten all of the oil and he's spent all of the treasure. But the wise holds on to it. We also see through the Proverbs that the people who end up with these valuable things are the wise also. Now, to explain a concept to you that will be useful to understand, or key to understanding what I'm going to talk about, I'm going to simplify some things in our world as it is into very, very basic ideas. If you were to simplify all of the goods that you could buy, all of the services that anyone could offer, anything in the economy that can be bought into 4 apples, okay? That's all of the goods and services, everything that can be bought are those 4 apples. And then you were to simplify all of the money that was in circulation in all of its various forms, and you were to put those in monopoly dollars, okay, and that's what represented all of the money. Then in a very simple way of understanding things, 1 apple, 1/4 of all of those things would be worth 1/4 of all of the stuff that there is out there to buy things. Now, it's a lot more complicated than that, but by understanding it in such simple terms, we can understand some more complicated ideas. So if you wanted to buy one of those apples, supply and demand, let's say everybody with money wants to buy apples, what one of those apples would cost because of their scarcity is $2. There's only 4 apples, so you need to use 1/4 of the money to buy one of them. So an apple would be worth 2 monopoly dollars in our example here. If we were to split the money supply up, okay, and we've got the private sector, which is you and I, okay, that's people, private companies, whatever it might be, and then you've got the public sector, which you can think of as the state, okay, or the government, people who build the roads, all of those things which are in public control. And let's say half of the money is in the private sector and half of the money is in the control of the state, in the control of the government. But you've got these 4 apples. We would end up that half of the apples would be in the private sector and half of the apples would be in the public sector. But what would happen if the government wanted to buy another apple? Okay, what could the government do, or what could you do if you wanted to buy another apple, but there were only so many monopoly dollars and you only had control over so many of them? Well, you as a private individual would not be able to do anything. What the government can do, if the government has control of the issuance of bonds, okay, what a bond is the government will say, if you buy this bond from us, then we will give you as much money as you've bought it for, plus some additional money, and we'll give you it back however many years into the future. And the government can issue these bonds, and they can be bought by private individuals, by anyone who wants them. If you have an organization which has the ability to create money, like the Bank of England or the Federal Reserve, then what the government can do is it can issue bonds, and then that private organization can print the money and buy those bonds. So the government can create that money, if you like. It can draw that money into its coffers, but that money never existed in the first place. And surprisingly, that's actually a very simplistic way of looking at how things can be done at the moment. Now, this is a promissory note. Okay, promissory note says this bill entitles the bearer to receive 20 Spanish milled dollars or the value thereof in gold or silver. And that's what a promissory note was up until earlier in the 20th century, okay? At that point, the promissory notes were able to be produced without being what we would call backed by something of value. So this would enable you to get a certain amount of gold or silver. And this would provide, or would prove to be a problem if a government wanted to do something like go to war, say, then they would need the money to go to war. They'd need to pay the soldiers' wages, they need to pay all of their travel costs and everything that's involved in going to war, and that would be an incredibly expensive thing. So if you had to pay for it with either gold, silver, or promissory notes that were backed by gold and silver, you wouldn't be able to do that. And it was kind of a hedge on people going to war in the past, because you'd need the treasury to provide all of the gold and silver that was required to pay for a war. What happened in Britain in 1931 and in America in 1933 is the promissory notes that we use were decoupled from what was called the gold standard. So they were no longer backed by gold. So every time you wanted to give someone a note, you didn't have to have the gold to back it up, because gold is scarce. Gold doesn't exist in huge amounts. So what you do is you take the promissory note, and that then is in a currency, in pounds. I promise to pay you this many pounds, and people have a conception of how much that many pounds is worth, rather than this will entitle you to a certain amount of gold. See, carrying around gold and silver was cumbersome. Okay, you don't want to be carrying around gold and silver. What you want is a bank where your gold or silver is kept in a vault, and you just give somebody a note, and that note can then be redeemed for gold and silver. And that's a good system, because that money is based on something real. When you give someone a note, even though it's just a piece of paper, they can take it and get something which is real and which is valuable. And those are the things that we see Yehovah asking to be brought to him, things that actually have real value. If the government was to issue the bonds, offer them for sale, a private organization which had been given the force of law to print money, then printed twice as much money, okay, there's still only 4 apples available, or still all of the goods and services in the economy available. When that money is printed, okay, each one of those dollars has an assumed value in the hands of somebody that you give it to. Your economy's got 4 apples, $8. Everybody knows that an apple is worth $2. So when you print that money, you can get the equivalent of those goods. Right at the beginning, when you print the money, if you give somebody $2, people think, I know how much $2 is worth and what sort of goods and services I should give you in exchange for this. That's at the beginning. What happens, however, when you print money into an economy is that it filters down, and eventually everybody knows an apple is actually not worth $2 because there's more money available. Now, an apple is worth $4. Okay, and it's very, very simple explanation of it. It's obviously much more complicated than this, but this is just to understand a principle which we know as inflation. Now, I want you to look at this. This is a banknote, okay, and at the same time, have a look at this. I want you to hold these two things together. Okay, you can see written at the top of the note, it's a promissory note. I promise to pay the bearer on demand the sum of £10, rather than pay the bearer on demand the equivalent value in silver. So if you look at those two things together, one of those things has real value It's an actual valuable item. One of those things is a promise to give somebody a currency which can be created upon demand. So if the government has an expense that they want to pay for, one option that is available to them is we will print more money and pay for whatever the thing is that we need to pay for. We have a need to pay for this thing, we'll just print more money. But of course, in very simplistic terms, if you inflate the amount of money that there is, then eventually everything becomes worth less. At the beginning, when they print it, they can pay what they've printed and it's worth what they've printed, but eventually what they've printed becomes worth less than that. And that's a principle that we know of as inflation. Okay, so you can see here how the price of a cup of coffee, 1970, 25 cents. In 2019, $1.15. Okay, by the time we've got to 2021, maybe it's $1.80 or something like that. And that's what we call inflation. Inflation is actually a good thing in certain contexts. Because our population inflates, the amount of money that we need also needs to inflate. But it's a good thing if it's tied to gold and silver, because then you need to go to a gold and silver mine and mine the gold and silver out of the mine. And you get an inflating amount of gold slowly over time, like you would have an increasing number of people. So if the currency is tied to something, then inflation plays a good role. It's a lot more complicated than that. It has other benefits as well. But this is what we've seen. This is why the price of things has increased slowly over time. Here we've got a news article saying the Bank of England to print 150 billion to boost economy as outlook worsens. So all of this money that the government has given to people recently, okay, it's not just gold that they had in the vaults. They didn't say, go and get the gold, we'll sell it all and give it to the people. That's not what they did. Okay, it's done through the issuance of government bonds and other financial instruments. Then the central bank of the country prints the money, gives it to the government, and then all of that money goes into all the circulating money, and it erodes the value of everything else. As I say, that's a very simplistic way of looking at it. If you listen to the people who are expert in the financial system, they would tell you a different story. They'd say, or maybe it's a little bit different because of this, but the general principle is correct. Okay, I'm not trying to give you all of the detail of the financial system. That's not my point. In America, okay, this is USA Today. The US is printing money to help save the economy from COVID-19 crisis, but some wonder how far it can go. Okay, where does the stimulus come from? Latest stimulus money was $2 trillion, okay, and that was just printed and dropped into people's laps. And as I say, when you give it to people, it's worth $2 trillion in today's currency, but that's not how it remains. And these things are complicated, as I say. You've got a deflationary model at the same time. People say, well, you can get hyperinflation, you can get deflation if you print all of this money and give it to people, and then most people put it in their savings accounts or buy things of real value with it or buy cars with it. Then actually what you're doing is you're creating deflation and things will be worth more eventually. And it's a lot more complicated, but the general principle is correct, okay, because not everybody's going to take that money and take it out of the economy. This is a picture from the 1920s from the Weimar Republic, which might not be a name that you recognize, but that's what Germany was called round about the First World War in the 1920s. That Germany was called the Weimar Republic. And this is a crucible full of cash. what are they going to do with the cash? They're going to burn it all because it's worthless. Germany was on the paper mark at the time. Okay, when they were in the First World War, what Germany did to pay for the war, the problem that I was talking about before, you need the money to come from somewhere. If your currency is backed by gold, then you need a whole ton of gold to go to war. Whereas France introduced their first income tax to pay for the war, what Germany did is they decoupled their paper mark from the gold standard, and they started to print money. And what they were going to do is they figured, well, we're going to win this war, so afterward the Allies will have to pay reparations to us, and we'll pay for the war with the reparations that are paid to us. Problem is, they lost that war. So they were the ones who had to pay reparations. So they've paid for this entire war with money that they printed, and now they have to pay reparations to all the other allies, the allied forces. What did they do? Well, the law said that they could only pay for it in gold or in foreign currency. So what they did is they bought gold and foreign currency with money that they printed. As I say, when you print money, it's worth what that money is worth at the time, and you can buy whatever you can buy with that money at the time, but eventually it filters into the economy, and you get the money being watered down to the point where it is worthless. Okay, this is a picture of a man in the Weimar Republic in the 1920s buying cash by weight. Okay, the cash was so worthless, it wasn't worth the denomination of cash. It was, I'll buy 50 kilos of cash, please. Okay, this is a picture, I believe this is a picture that's actually from a film about the time that this was happening, but this is a picture of kids playing in the street with bundles of paper marks because it was worth so little that they played with it as building blocks. Here's a woman burning money to warm her house. Okay, this is how little this was worth. These are people who are, going to do their weekly shop with carts full of money because this is how much money you needed. And the situation got increasingly worse from 1921 to 1923. So maybe in 1921 you could go out and buy something with a cart full of money, but then by the time 1923 came around, everybody was burning money to keep their houses warm. People were wallpapering the walls with paper notes. This is a loaf of bread that's up for 460 million marks. This will have been around the end of 1921, 1922. By the end of 1923, the peak of this crisis, it was worth 200 billion marks for a loaf of bread. And we've seen similar things in Hungary, in Zimbabwe. We're seeing something very similar to this in Venezuela at the moment, where currencies get hyperinflated and things just cost gradually more and more and more money. So that paper note, you see at the moment, that's worth what you can buy for £10. That's its value, whatever you can buy with it. But it has no set value. It's not like this note is worth a piece of gold. Whereas that piece of silver, that will not inflate. Okay, it could inflate if everybody mined all the silver out of all the mines simultaneously, but that doesn't happen. The thing that gives gold and silver value, because they're inherently worthless, if you take a piece of gold or a piece of silver, you think, well, what gives this any value? The thing that gives it value is the time and energy that somebody has taken to go and extract that from the earth. It's a very difficult process to mine gold or silver. So that's what actually gives it inherent value. Because if you want some of it, somebody needs to go and they need to mine, use all the explosives or whatever, all the trucks, all the rock crushers and all the things that you need to refine a piece of gold or a piece of silver into that thing. So that's what gives it inherent value. This is a picture, a modern day picture of one of the notes next to a Monday loaf of bread, that is 1,000 million or a billion marks. So that loaf of bread, if it was existing in 1923, would have cost you 200 of these billion mark notes. And the same can happen with our currency. That could happen with our currency. And if you're constantly printing money and putting it into the economy, which is what the Germans did or the Weimar Republicans did, that will be the outcome of that. In the end, there were 1.2 sextillion marks in circulation. So you got, a trillion, a quadrillion, a pentillion, a sextillion. So it's quite a big number. That was their economy. That's how many there were in total. Okay, this is the price of gold in Reichsmarks from 1918, the end of the war, to 1924. Okay, a piece of gold, you could buy one there for 1 mark. 1 mark for 1 gold mark that's backed by gold. But obviously, as the currency inflated, then you've got more currency. You've only got a certain number of pieces of gold. You need more currency to buy those pieces of gold. And the place where you end up at on the 30th of November, 1923, is 1 trillion. Okay, so if you want to buy a piece of gold that would have cost you 1 mark 5 years ago, or £1 5 years ago, think of it in those terms, it ends up costing you £1 trillion in the end. So this is the danger of a currency which is not based on anything, which the government can issue bonds which are then bought by a private entity. This is where it could end up. Obviously, people in control of the financial system are not unaware of this. And if you spoke to them, they would tell you something, oh, it's okay, we're going to do it in measured ways, or, we understand that this might end up like this and we're not going to do that, whatever. The point is, the currency debases over time. It becomes worth less over time, and that's without the printing of money. What we saw after the financial crisis in 2008, what we're seeing now with COVID-19, is something that they call quantitative easing. That's what they call it. Quantitative, you get a big quantity of money to ease the situation, basically. So we're going to print a ton of money, and we're going to use this printed money to pay for things, because when we print it, it's worth something. And we're going to pay for the things that we need to pay for. Okay, we're not going to war. We're dealing with people who need to buy their shopping or whatever. But this is what printing money leads to. Now, interestingly, okay, what they did, how they at first attempted to deal with this was a mark which was based on mortgage bonds backed by rye. Okay, so rye is something which is worth something. So it doesn't matter what you back your currency with, as long as it's worth something. You can redeem it for a certain amount of rye, or you can redeem it for a certain amount of silver, or of gold, or of olive oil, or of timber, or whatever you want it to be backed on. So they attempted this. That was rejected for whatever reason. It's not worth going into. What they ended up with was the Renton mark. Okay, the Renton mark, they swapped, I believe it was 1 trillion paper marks for a Renton mark. So for every £1 trillion you'd got, you can imagine if the government said, what we're going to do is we're going to give you £1 for every £1 trillion that you've got, one of these new pounds. So this is what Germany ended up doing. This is the US monetary M1 supply. M1 is a term which is used in the kind of the financial world, and it means basically the money that's in circulation and the money that's in people's current accounts, or checking accounts as people call it in the US. What you see here, February 2020, March 2020, the printing of money went up. And you'll see this graph be bandied about, and people will say, look, the M1 money supply went up by 40%. And then you'll hear people on the other side saying, well, actually, no, it didn't. If you understand what the money supplies are, you've got M0, which is all the currency in circulation, M1, which is all the currency plus your current accounts, money that you hold in a form which is immediately accessible. Then you've got M2, which is all of M1 money plus people's savings accounts and money that's a bit harder to get at. Then you got M3, which is, all of these other monetary instruments included in it. And people will say, well, actually what they did is people with money and savings took their money out of M2 and put it into M1, and that's why you get this raise in M1. And you think, oh, okay, so it wasn't actually inflated because of printing of money. And if you don't understand these things, and I certainly don't understand these things to any depth, just kind of on a very surface level, then you can find yourself being battered back and forth by people on either side who sound like they know what they're talking about. But if we can just hold on to those economic principles that we see in the Bible, that wealth is what is something which is worth something, oil or desirable treasure or whatever it will be, then we don't need to engage with any of this. And, if you look at the M2 and M3 supplies over that amount of time, they increased. So was that the printing of money? You could have arguments on both sides for that. We do know, though, that money is being printed. 150 billion in Britain, 2 trillion in just the latest stimulus in America. There used to be a time when saving your money was the wise thing to do. Well, what should I do with my money? Put it in a savings account and, save it for a rainy day. Don't go out, don't live beyond your means, and save your money, and that's the wise thing to do. If you save your money now, it's a little bit different from that, because if you take the money out of the economy and you save it, then what you're doing is you're having a deflationary effect on the rest of the money. You're making all the rest of the money worth more because there's less in circulation. So if while you're doing that, somebody else is printing money, you're just making the money that they print worth more money, and they're making the money that you're saving worth less money. We know at least that the rate of inflation, which the government reckons to be, or the financial industry reckons to be 2% a year, that if you save your money, it will be eroded by 2% a year, and that's at least 2% a year. That's not taking into account all of this printing of money. So what should we do? Okay, should we save paper notes that aren't worth anything? No, what we need to do is we need to take paper notes that are, when I say they're not worth anything, they're worth whatever anyone will give you for it at any given time. You take those things and you exchange them for things of real value. Things like that silver coin, because they don't get eroded by inflation. Their value, when rated in British pounds, will go up. It doesn't mean that they're worth any more intrinsically. It just means that the pound is worth less. So you have to give people more of them ultimately. But we can store value, so to speak, in silver or in gold or in anything which is worth something. We see the things in the tabernacle, things like oil, things like wine. So food, grain, all of these sorts of things, they're actually worth something. But in our modern culture, we've become completely disconnected from that. And you might think, wow, I've got loads of money in my bank account now. If I'd have had this much money in my bank account in 1970, I'd have been able to retire and live on an island somewhere. But the money supply is increasing. here is gold priced in Venezuelan bolivars, okay, from just 2018. And this goes to August 2018. It went from here, 1 bolivar, to 211 million bolivars to buy a piece of gold. Again, it doesn't mean, oh, I'm rich, I've got 211 million bolivars just from keeping this piece of gold. No, it just means that the bolivar is worth less. It's currently 3.2 billion bolivars to buy a piece of gold. Okay, so you can see how these things that have real value retain their value over time. But interestingly, the Venezuelan stock market, if you're somebody who owns stocks, Venezuelan stock market is at the top. It's as high as it's ever been, which makes perfect sense because it's rated in Venezuelan bolivars. It doesn't mean that the stock market and your stocks have suddenly increased and you've become a stock genius. It just means that the money is being debased. So if people say, well, I've got my 401ks or I've got my stock investments for retirement, the stock market may well look like it's going up, but that's nothing of any real value. If you're rating it in something which has got no value or decreasing value, you're always going to think that you've got more when in fact you've got less. So what's the thing that we're to do? This is all very confusing. Is it inflationary or is it actually going to be a deflationary effect? And if we have a deflationary collapse, is this going to happen? And if you listen to this person, they say this. And if you listen to that person, they say that. None of that is important at all. That's not what we need to reckon with. What we need to reckon with is not the modern thinking of what is wealth? Is it having loads of money in my bank account? I can pull out loads of £50 notes. Or is it something of real value? And since we've seen that the money that we have can be inflated with the government's permission, if you like, we know that it's not honest money. It's not something that is based on anything that is honest or anything that is real. So when we're looking to store value in anything, what would be better for us to do, rather than saving up a load of £20 notes or whatever, is to just purchase things which have real value that we use, because that's honest money. Okay, and it's not partaking in that system of dishonest money, which is like, whoa, I can buy this for this today, but then if somebody gives me permission to print a load of these things, I can buy loads of those things, and then everyone's money's worth less, ultimately. Okay, so what I would say to anyone who has any level of savings, as I mentioned before, an ounce of silver is about $30. Most people can come up with $30, or as you're putting money away, do it in things that are worth money. If you're a tradesman like James, maybe you'd want to buy things that are valuable for your business. Maybe you buy a load of screws or a load of timber or something like that. But things that are actually worth money, tools, whatever it is. I love tools. I love actual things that are useful. And a large part of it is this, because they're actually valuable. They're actually worth something, and they're actually useful in the world. I would rather have these things than a pocket full of paper. Now, this is a guy called John Maynard Keynes. You might have heard of Keynesian economics, Austrian economics. Well, this is Keynes. This quote is attributed to him. I don't know if he actually said it. Markets can remain irrational longer than you can remain solvent. And what that basically means is, if you look at the fact that money's inflating and they're putting more money into the economy, and you say, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to go out and I'm going to buy a ton of silver. And then what's going to happen is the money's going to inflate, and then the money's not going to be worth anything. And my silver, I can sell it for $100 billion pounds or whatever. What he's saying is, listen, the markets, they don't make sense. And if you're relying on them making sense and you're trying to plan out this financial move and you're trying to think, well, I'm going to make money off doing this in the future, the markets can remain irrational way longer than you can remain sovereign. And this is a good thing to remember, because with the inflation of currency, an idea that comes along with it is what you should do is you should take out loads of debt. You should buy a house. Because if you buy a house for £200,000 and then in 5 years, £200,000 isn't worth anything and you can get £200,000 for selling a loaf of bread, then buy a house and sell a loaf of bread in 5 years and then you get your house for free, which is obviously inherently dishonest anyway. But I'd say that this is a principle to bear in mind. We don't need to be thinking in terms of, oh, I'm going to plan this investment out and then this is going to be worth loads more or anything like that. We just need to be thinking in terms of this paper money is not worth anything. This is worth something. This is inherently dishonest. This is inherently honest. Best advice to anybody is to get out of debt. Don't be thinking, oh, well, it's all going to inflate soon. The Bible doesn't say that it is something that we cannot do to go into debt. It doesn't forbid going into debt. But what it does is it speaks of it in pejorative terms. It speaks badly of it. Proverbs 22 verse 7 says, the rich rules over the poor and the borrower is servant to the lender. And the Bible's full of verses about debt, being in debt. So, biblically speaking, what God recommends you do with your money is get out of debt. Don't be in debt. Own things that are worth something. Okay? All this idea of paper money and all of that, there's never anything to do with anything that Yehovah says is of any value. And we don't need to be looking for investment strategies of man. We need to be looking to what Yehovah says is good. Buying things that are worth something, copper, oil, steel, gold, silver, corn, all of those things are actually worth something. You think money is worth something, and the only reason you think that is because you can buy things that are actually worth something with it. But that money itself isn't worth anything more than what you can get for it. Houses are worth something. Houses are worth having. If you've got a house, that's a great way to save your money. Okay, something tangible, something real. A house is always going to be worth a house. A house might be worth what you buy it for today. It might be worth 50 times as much or 50 times as little in the future, but that doesn't matter. That's just kind of economic games. What it's worth, and it's always worth to you, is one house. If you think, well, buying silver, $30, although it's not loads, it's not nothing either, you can always buy copper. Anything which is worth something, buy grain, buy whatever it is, but have it in the form of something which is worth something. I'm not sure how much an ounce of copper is at the moment, but it's a very small amount. I'd say it's probably about a pound or something along those lines. The other thing that you can get which is worth something, Charlie, would you mind? Sorry? James says copper is £12 a kilo. So that would be about $16 a kilo or something like that. Okay, you will see this image in, if you read an article about Bitcoin or something like that, you will see this image, and this thing that you'll be able to see, that's not actually worth anything. That's not a Bitcoin. That's worth about £3. I bought it because it was worth something to me. It was something that was desirable to me. Okay, but you'll see this picture and you might think, wait there, Bitcoin. I always see these pictures of coins, but isn't it something that you do on a computer? I'm just confused. What is Bitcoin? Now, Bitcoin is something which is worth something for the same reason that silver or gold is worth something. Because in order to get a Bitcoin, you need to mine it. And and I'll explain this, in order to mine a Bitcoin, you have to put a load of money, like a seriously large amount of money into electricity. And then you have to have the skills, the programming skills to be able to get the hardware and make all of it work and mine Bitcoin. And it's people's expertise and it's time and it's energy, which is represented by a Bitcoin. That's why it is worth something. When you mine a Bitcoin, basically what you're doing is you're using a very powerful computer to solve a mathematical equation, a very hard equation. And the thing that gives it value, as I say, is the time and the energy that goes into it. No matter how powerful computers get, the Bitcoin network, which decides the dispensing of these Bitcoins every 10 minutes, will adjust in terms of its difficulty. So people will say, well, what if you get a quantum computer? Not understanding what a quantum computer is. But anyway, couldn't that mine Bitcoin? Well, if you put a quantum computer on the Bitcoin network and it could mine Bitcoin, then all you're going to do is push the difficulty right up. So you're still always going to have the giving out of the same amount of Bitcoins every 10 minutes. And what has happened is at first when Bitcoin was mined, 50 Bitcoins were given out to the mining pool that solved the equation. Okay, they had the computer that solved the equation. You basically got all these different pools of people and computer resources competing to solve these equations. And when they solve them, whichever one does, gets an allocation of Bitcoin. And it started at 50 and then it halved to 12.5 to 25. Then 3.5 to 4 years later, that halved to 12.5. As the price of Bitcoin has gone up, the amount of Bitcoin that you get for putting all that time and energy and skill into mining it has halved. So what Bitcoin did, the amazing thing about it, is it solved what was called in digital currency the double spend problem. Because you think if you've got a currency and it's on a computer, why can't you copy it? Why can't you send it to pay one transaction and then pay another transaction? And without going into details about it, what Bitcoin did, this was a known problem in the computing world at the time, but Bitcoin enabled this problem to be solved. And it's done by transactions being verified by miners. And it's all very complicated and it's not very important. All you need to know is that the number of these Bitcoins which is produced every 10 minutes has diminished every 3.5 to 4 years, which is why we've seen these market cycles go in big spikes. And then about 3.5, 4 years later, you have another halving of the amount of Bitcoins that are produced. And because of supply and demand, that sends the price right up. So we went from $1,000 to $20,000, from $20,000 to it's about $50,000 right now. And you don't need to own an entire Bitcoin. You think, wow, $50,000, there's no way I'm buying a Bitcoin. Bitcoin is divisible by up to 8 decimal places. So 0.701 Bitcoin would be worth today about 0.05 cents. Okay, so a very small amount of money. So people can get Bitcoin. It's not divisible by 1. It's divisible by a large number. It has inherent value, and it's something that you can buy on your computer and you can store for yourself. Now, I'll pass this around. Sorry, Charlie. Okay. You think, well, okay, Bitcoin, doesn't that just mean that I can only have it on my computer? Well, that's not actually the way that it works. You can print off, or you can create something which is called a paper wallet. And what a paper wallet is a real physical thing that you can transfer the Bitcoin to. Okay, so that disk of metal that I'm passing around there, that is just something that I had engraved with the information from a paper wallet on it. You've got a shorter number, or letters and numbers on one side, longer letters and numbers on the other. The shorter one is the public key, which people would need to send Bitcoin to you. The longer one is the private key, which you would need to extract the Bitcoin from it. So that's not the code of a Bitcoin, that's the code of a wallet. So you can send Bitcoin to that coin, in essence, to that piece of metal. And that piece of metal could have £5 on it, or it could have 50 billion pounds on it. That coin is not worth one Bitcoin. That coin is worth as much Bitcoin as you have sent to it. So it could be worth, $20 million, or it could be worth $1, just determined by how much you want to send there. So you can actually hold the Bitcoin yourself, not in somebody else's, what they call custodianship. You can have it yourself, and you can put that somewhere safe, and anytime you can just enter that code and redeem what is stored at that address on the what's called the blockchain. What a blockchain is essentially a ledger of all the transactions that have happened. So Bitcoin is honest money, because you can't print more Bitcoin, you can't just create more Bitcoin. You've got to go through all the time and expense of actually creating it and mining that Bitcoin. It's something that with money, we don't know the transactions that happen with money. Maybe your credit card company would know what you do with your credit card. But with Bitcoin, we have a ledger of every transaction which has ever happened. So we know who sent what money to whom. And if we think of them printing money, that could never happen. If we think of the issuance of bonds that are then just bought for paper money, that could never happen. It's been suggested, I know that Citibank are talking about things like this at the moment, that Bitcoin could be what backs bonds, so that every bond is on the ledger, it's on the blockchain. So you've got an immutable, a non-changeable record of every transaction that's happened. So you can't just have the issuance of bond after bond after bond, because it's backed by Bitcoin, which is a real thing. There will only ever be 21 million Bitcoin ever mined. So it's incredibly scarce. If you think about 21 million divided amongst the population of the world, okay, that is incredibly scarce. And at the moment, there's about 18.6 million. By the end of Bitcoin being mined, there will only ever be 21 million Bitcoin. That will be at some point in the next 100 years, okay? So it's worth something. It's something which is scarce and is being produced less and less. So it's inherently deflational. So if you're looking for a possibility of a place where you could put money in something which is real and which is tangible, which is immutable, which is honest, unlike gold and silver, which can be produced with more mining, Bitcoin is about as honest a money as you can get. So you hear all sorts of things about Bitcoin by people who really don't understand it, haven't got the first idea about what they're talking about. But Bitcoin is honest money. So if you want something real, Bitcoin would certainly be a possibility. And those are the reasons why it's worth something. For the people who are online, this is what I just passed around. You create a paper wallet, which is just an address. You can send Bitcoin to these addresses. I just had a piece of metal engraved with the address and the private address which you would need to retrieve the Bitcoin from it. So that's what I just passed around. In Ecclesiastes 11:4-6, Solomon gives us what I think is an incredibly important financial principle. He says, "He who watches the wind does not sow. He who looks at the cloud does not reap. As you do not know what is the way of the wind, or how the bones grow in the womb of her who is with child, so you do not know the works of Elohim, who makes all and governs all. Sow your seed in the morning, and until evening do not let your hand rest, since you do not know which prosper, this or that, or whether both alike are good." So I'm not trying to tell people, go out and buy Bitcoin, or go out and buy gold, it's going to go up loads in value, or silver's going to go up loads in value, or go and buy steel because people need steel to buy. No, none of that. Okay, you don't know which thing will succeed, which won't succeed. I'm not saying go out and buy a house, or don't go out and buy a house, or whatever. Just saying these things are real and they have value, and they're the things that we should value too, because they have value to Yehovah. Yehovah spoke to Moshe, saying, "See, I have called by name Bezalel, son of Uri, son of Cher, of the tribe of Yehudah." This is what we'll finish with, what he says about the building of his tabernacle. It says, "I have filled him with the spirit of Elohim in wisdom and understanding and in knowledge and in all work." So these things also are valuable to Yehovah, to have people who can make things with these things of value. To make designs for work in gold and in silver and in bronze, and in cutting stones for setting, and in carving wood, and to work in all work. And I have appointed with him Aholiab, son of Ahismach, of the tribe of Dan. And I've put wisdom in the heart of everyone who is wise of heart, and they shall make all that I have commanded you. The tent of meeting, the ark of the witness, the lid of atonement that is on it, and the utensils of the tent, and the table and its utensils, and the clean gold lampstand with all its utensils, and the altar of incense, and the altar of burnt offering with all its utensils, and the basin and its stand, and the woven garments, and the set-apart garments for Aaron the priest, and the garments of his sons for serving as priests, and the anointing oil and the sweet incense for the set-apart place, according to all that I have commanded you, they are to do. Okay, what we'll do is we'll take a break at this point, and we'll come back. How long shall we take as a break? Okay. 25 past. Okay, we'll take a break for 15 minutes, and we'll come back. But Yehovah, he gives these things. These are the things he values, the skills that he gives to people to make things of worth from these things. So someone like James would be highly regarded by Yehovah, somebody who has the expertise and skill to take these real world things, wood and steel and whatever else it is, and create something which is better than the sum of its parts from it. But the sum of its parts are valuable too. Now this is where we got up to. I looked at this slide and I thought, oh wait, there's a good bit after this. But like I said at the beginning, I changed it all around, and I cut out loads of the Torah portion and just focused on certain bits of it. And that last part and the part one were originally one part, and I changed it around a load. So you'll see that there's not very far until the end of that part. It says, "And when the people saw that Moshe was so long in coming down from the mountain, the people gathered together to Aharon and said to him, 'Arise, make us gods who go before us. For this Moshe, the man who brought us up out of the land of Egypt, we do not know what has become of him.'" So we're following Yehovah. Moshe is the one who's going to speak to Yehovah. Moshe's been ages. We don't know what's become of him. Make us another god, is what they ask Aaron. But Aaron said to them, Take off the gold earrings which are in the ears of your wives, your sons, and your daughters, and bring them to me. And all the people took off the golden earrings which were in their ears and brought them to Aharon. And he took this from their hand, and he formed it with an engraving tool and made the molded calf. And they said, "This is your God, O Israel, that has brought you out of the land of Mitzrayim." And the very simple point that I was going to make at the end of the last part was, look at what's happening. Moshe's up at the top of the mountain, and Yehovah's saying, take the things of value that you have and make for me a dwelling place and use them to worship me. And here's all the people at the bottom of the mountain taking all their gold off and giving it to Aaron and saying, make us a false idol. And the simple point that I was going to make is this is what people do, isn't it? They use the things that they have of value and they use them to worship their false gods in whatever forms they take, be that what it may. And then that was the end of part 2. And it would have led very nicely into part 3. So here we are. They said to Moshe, come, go up from here, you and the people, whom you have brought out of the land of Mitzrayim, to the land which I swore to Abraham, to Yitzchak, and to Yaakov, saying, to your seed I give it. So this is it, Moses. You're going to take them into the land. This is going to be the fulfillment of the promise. And he says, I shall send my angel before you, and I shall drive out the Canaanite and the Amorite and the Hittite and the Perizzite and the Hivite and the Jebusite to a land flowing with milk and honey, for I do not go up in your midst, because you are a stiff-necked people, lest I consume you on the way. And when the people heard this evil word, they mourned, and no one put on his ornaments. Again, these things of value. But what he's saying to them is, I'm going to send my angel before you, and I'm going to drive out your enemies before you, but I'm not going to go up in your midst. And Moshe took his tent, and he pitched it outside the camp, far from the camp, and he called it the tent of meeting. So this isn't the tabernacle where he would end up meeting with Yehovah. This is Moses taking his tent, taking it outside of the camp, pitching it there, and he calls this the tent of meeting. And it came to be that everyone who saw Yehovah went out to the tent of meeting, which was outside the camp. So he's just received all the instructions on building the tabernacle. He's come down. He's seen all of the people kind of partying and having a feast, saying this is a feast to Yehovah, and using all their worldly wealth for going after all their false idols. And he gets all the Levites to come with him, and they go through the camp and they smite a bunch of people. So this is after all of those events. So he's been told how to build the tabernacle. He comes down, he finds them all doing that, but they haven't yet built the tabernacle. That comes later. So what he does at this point is he makes his own tent, the tent of meeting, which will later be the tabernacle. And it came to be, whenever Moshe went out to the tent, that all the people rose and each man stood at his tent door, watched Moshe until he entered the tent. And it came to be when Moshe entered the tent that the column of cloud descended and stood at the door of the tent. And he spoke with Moshe. So Moshe would meet with him in the Holy of Holies, in the tabernacle. Subsequent to this, at this point, he takes his own tent. Yehovah comes down and meets with him and speaks to him. And all the people saw the column of cloud standing at the tent door, and all the people rose and bowed themselves, each one at the door of his tent. Thus Yehovah spoke to Moshe face to face, as a man speaks to his friend, and he would return to the camp, but his servant Yehoshua, son of Nun, a young man, did not leave the tent. So Moshe's servant and attendant Joshua stayed in his tent. He was there when Yehovah would come and he would speak to Moshe. And we saw when we went through Joshua that it may well have actually been been Joshua that wrote the Torah. And Moshe said to Yehovah, See, you are saying to me, bring up this people, but you have not made known to me whom you would send with me. Though you have said, I know you by name, and you have found favor in my eyes. Now please, if I have favor in your eyes, please show me your way and let me know you, so that I find favor in your eyes. And consider that this nation your people. So this is what's valuable to Moses. This is what he wants. Through all of this, he's saying to Yehovah, and we'll see as we continue through, he's saying, you coming with us, you being in our midst, that's what's valuable. Teach me your way so that I find favor in your eyes, and call this people your people. And he said, my presence does go, and I shall give you rest. And he said to him, if your presence is not going, do not lead us up from here. And this is really important when we consider the things that we're going to consider in this Torah portion. We're going to see that Yehovah reveals to us this incredibly, actually valuable thing, that he would be with us and he would kind of be partner with us, if you like. Obviously not on equal footing, but kind of like a partner with us in the things that we do in our life, in the situations that we encounter in our life. For how then shall it be known that I have found favor in your eyes, I and your people, except you go with us? Then we shall be distinguished, I and your people, from all the people who are on the face of the earth. So this is what Moshe wants, and he says, listen, if your presence isn't going with us, don't bother leading us up from here. We need you to be with us. And Yehovah said to Moshe, even this word which you have spoken, I shall do for you. For you, rather, have found favor in my eyes, and I know you by name. And he said, please show me your esteem. And he said, I shall cause all my goodness to pass before you, and I shall proclaim the name of Yehovah before you, and shall favor him whom I favor, and shall have compassion on him whom I have compassion. So he says here, okay, I'm going to come down and I'm going to pass by you. He said, but you are unable to see my face, for no man does see me and live. So I'm going to see, he says, you're going to see my back. I'm going to pass by you, and I'm going to do this incredible thing for you. And what he promises that he's going to do, we can kind of lose the specialness of what it is, because think of Moshe, think of what access Moshe has to understanding who the Lord is. He's experienced him. His understanding of him is experiential. Things that he's heard about him, perhaps from tales that people have told of the forefathers or whatever it might be. But we have the word of Yehovah. We can read it and understand who he is. We can understand what his name is. So when he says, I'm going to pass before you and I'm going to proclaim my name, who I am, to you, we lose what that actually is to Moshe. One of the most incredible things that would have happened on the earth, if not just then, ever. And Yehovah said, see, there is a place with me, and you shall stand on the rock. And it shall be, while my esteem passes by, that I shall put you in the cleft of the rock and cover you with my hand while I pass by. Then I shall take away my hand, and you shall see my back, but my face shall not be seen. And then he comes down and he proclaims his name. Yehovah came down in the cloud and stood with him there. Again, imagine what this would be to be Moshe at this time, to not have the word of Yehovah, to have Yehovah himself come down and stand with you and to proclaim his name. And he proclaimed the name Yehovah. So this is what Yehovah proclaimed his name to be to Moshe. And Yehovah passed before him and proclaimed, Yehovah, Yehovah, an El compassionate and showing favor, patient and great in kindness and truth, watching over kindness for thousands, forgiving iniquity and transgression and sin, but by no means leaving unpunished visiting the iniquities of the fathers upon the children and the children's children to the third and fourth generation. So we can pick this up just by reading about who he is, the things that he does, the way that he treats people, people who do good, people who do bad and then repent, and people who are just wicked. We can learn these things about his character through his word. But he's telling Moshe in person. Moshe hurried and bowed himself toward the earth and did obeisance and said, if now I've found favor in your eyes, O Yehovah, I pray, let Yehovah go on in our midst, even though we are a stiff-necked people, and forgive our iniquity and our sin, and take us as your inheritance. Because he's just been up on the top of the mountain. He's just learned about this incredible house that Yehovah wants to be built so that he can go about in the midst of the people. Then he came down and the people were all dancing around the golden calf. And he breaks the stones and he's mad at the people. He goes up and he intercedes for the people. And this is afterwards when he's come down and he's taken his own tent and he set it outside the camp, and he meets with Yehovah there and he says to him, please go on in our midst. And he said, see, I am making a covenant before all your people. I'm going to do such wonders such as have not been seen in all the earth, nor in any nation. And all the people among whom you are shall see the work of Yehovah, for what I am doing with you is awesome. And again, we've got the entire word. We've got all of the promises of Yehovah, what he's going to do in exact detail. But Moshe didn't have any of this. These are promises that are being made fresh to Moses that we can read of. Cherish what I command you today. See, I am driving out from before you the Amorites, the Canaanites, and the Hittite, and the Perizzite, and the Hivite, and the Jebusite. Guard yourself, lest you make a covenant with the inhabitants of the land where you are going, lest it be a snare in your midst. But break down their altars, smash their pillars, and cut down their Asherim. In Deuteronomy 7:16-18, we read this, and you've consumed all the peoples whom Yehovah your Elohim is delivering over to you. Your eye has no pity for them. You do not serve their gods, for that is a snare to you. And what we're going to see as we go through these next verses, we're going to see that Yehovah asks of us sometimes things that are uncomfortable for us, things that are valuable for us. He asks of us. Did he ask of the Israelites? He asked them their grain, their animals, things which were really important in their lives that they might have thought, well, I can't do without those things. But we're going to see he reassures them about these things. And he says, no, when these doubts arise in your heart and you're thinking, oh, I'm not sure about that, then have no fear. When you say in your heart, these nations are greater than I am unable to drive them out. When you say this, there's no way. Yehovah said, go and do this. There's no way I can do that. He says, you are not afraid of them. You do surely remember what Yehovah your Elohim has done to Pharaoh and to all Mitzrayim. So he says, when you're afraid of them, you are not afraid of them because you remember. So he expects us to have these things arise in our hearts, thoughts that we have where we think, oh, that's going to be difficult. I'm not sure how I can possibly do that. But the key to all of it is what Moshe is identifying, that Yehovah goes with us in our midst. We don't do these things alone. Yehovah does them with us. You are not afraid of them. You remember the things that Yehovah has done. In verse 14 of chapter 34, it says, you do not bow yourselves to another God. For Yehovah, whose name is jealous, is a jealous Ale, lest you make a covenant with the inhabitants of the land, and they whore after their gods and sacrifice to their gods, and one of them invites you, and you eat of his sacrifices, and you take of his daughters for your sons, and his daughters whore after their gods, and make your sons whore after their gods. Do not make a molded god for yourself. So this is just after they've made a molded god. And Yehovah is teaching them about the things that will lead them astray into such behavior. And he says to them, cherish the festival of unleavened bread. For 7 days you eat unleavened bread, as I commanded you, in the appointed time of the month of Aviv, because in the month of Aviv you came out from Mitzrayim. So in the Chodesh, that everything becomes ripe, that's the one that you came out from Mitzrayim. So going forward, the Chodesh that you do these things in will be the one when everything becomes ripe. What he's asking of them in cherish the festival of unleavened bread, in that one sentence, he's saying, I'm going to ask you to bring to me a lamb. I'm going to ask of you the first fruits of your crop, the very first bit of your crop that you get before you've seen all of the harvest. Bring the first of it to me, this incredible act of faith. All of the offerings which will be brought in unleavened bread, all of that is contained in this statement, come to Jerusalem, bring with you your goods. All of this is contained in that statement. And all of those things are things that you require faith that Yehovah is with you to do. If you think of an agricultural people, what it would be for them to bring grain, what it would be for them to bring all their animals, to leave all of their farmland, wherever they were in the land of Israel, with all of their enemies around them to attack them, to just leave all of that, pick up and take everything to Jerusalem. These things are an incredible act of faith, these things that are being asked of them. Verse 19 says, everyone opening the womb is mine, and every male firstborn among your livestock, whether bull or sheep, the first offspring of all of your livestock, the very first thing that you get from all of that process of rearing them and then having the animals mate and then bringing them to term and them having the baby. I want you to take that thing and I want you to give it to me. But the firstborn of a donkey you ransom with a lamb, which again is going to be this incredibly valuable thing. And if you do not ransom them, then you shall break his neck. Okay, so you don't want to give the valuable thing, then you have to give up the other valuable thing. Every firstborn of your sons you shall ransom, and they shall not appear before me empty-handed. So you're going to have a son, firstborn son? Okay, well, I require this of you, 5 shekels of silver. 6 days you work, but on the 7th day you rest. In plowing time and in harvest you rest. So the 7th day, you're not to do any work on it. It doesn't matter whether it's incredibly important for you to work on that day. That doesn't matter. I require of you that sacrifice to give me that. You don't work, whether it's plowing time or harvest time, the most important times of the year where the crops would be in danger. You don't plant early enough, or you don't harvest and get it safe, or store it in the right way, or whatever you need to do during those times. I require of you, stop. And all of the understanding that you need to understand how that works is contained in what Moshe was saying. He was saying, if you do not go up in our midst, do not lead us up from here at all, because Yehovah being with us and working with us is necessary for all of these things. We need to rely on him for all of these things and stop just trying to rely on ourselves to plow everything and harvest everything. When it comes to it, Yehovah says, no. In the 7th year even, the entire 7th year, I don't want you to plant crops for that entire year. That year itself, the whole year is a Sabbath. To a people who are relying on crops, that is an incredible investment of faith. And what is required to make that investment of faith is that understanding that you're working together with Yehovah, and he is going up in your midst. He is with you. That's what faith in those situations looks like. Perform the festival of weeks for yourself, of the first fruits of wheat harvest, of the festival of ingathering at the turn of the year. Again, the first fruits of your crop, be it in the summer, the wheat crop, or be it at the end of the year, the grapes and the fruit. You bring the first to Yehovah. 3 times in the year, all your men are to appear before the Master Yehovah, the Elohim of Yisrael. Adonai Yehovah, you appear before him 3 times a year. You leave all of your farmland, all your stuff. You bring the first fruits up. You bring the tithe of your stuff. You bring all of it up and present it before Yahovah. For I dispossess nations before you and shall enlarge your borders, and let no one covet your land when you go up to appear before Yahovah your Elohim 3 times in a year. So that's what his promise is to them. He says, I'll look after this. All you need to do is obey what I've told you to do. Go up to Jerusalem. Leave all of your land unattended. I will make sure that nobody comes and takes your land during the time when, to your reckoning, it would be vulnerable. Yahovah said to Moshe, write these words, for according to the mouth of these words I have made a covenant with you and with Israel. And all of this is Yahovah's name. It's who he is. We can rely on him to be with us. He's established this as a covenant, as a promise to us. And Matthew 6:19-34 says, do not lay up for yourselves treasures on earth where moth and rust destroy and where thieves break in and steal. But lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven where neither moth nor rust destroys and where thieves do not break in and steal. So with all of this talk of having things of material value and of worth, we're to remember that in all of these things, there's something beyond that which is of value. As Yeshua puts it, laying up for yourself treasure in heaven, which he explains is seeking first the kingdom of Elohim and what he says. So it's his involvement in our lives that allows us to do all of those things. Think what Yahovah has asked of the Israelites. He said, okay, I want you to bring these animals to me. Every time you bring an animal, I want you to bring some grain and some oil, maybe some wine. I want you to bring all of those things. I want you to leave your farms 3 times a year. If you're plowing or you're harvesting, I want you to just leave that if it's the Sabbath day. Every 7 years, I want you to not plant any crops in the land, and I want you to just trust in me. The things that he's asked, it's almost like just thing after thing after thing. And it reads to me almost like he's trying to get the people to a point where they trust him, where they just give up on themselves and they say, wow, okay, so what don't you want from me, sort of thing. I'll give all these things to you. The only way that I can give all of these things to you, though, to honor you, to build your tabernacle of gold and all of the rest of it, the only way that that's going to work in my head is if I trust you. And Moshe's saying, come up in our midst. We want to build your tabernacle. I don't think Moshe was there saying, oh, wow, loads of talents of silver and gold we're going to need for that. That's all the silver and gold that we've got. If we give it to you, when we get to the land, we're not going to have any silver and gold. What are we going to do then? I don't think that Moshe's thinking like that. This is what Yeshua is explaining to us here, that the things on earth are not where it's at. Okay, we can use of those things in the things that Yahovah asks of us, giving to the poor, giving to the widow, giving to the orphan or the fatherless, giving to the stranger, making people feel welcome, accommodating people. Lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven where neither moth nor rust destroys and where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart shall be also. So in all of these things that Yahovah gives us, we don't get fat and satisfied with all the things. We can use all of these things to make them even better than they are, to honor Yahovah with the wealth which he gives us the power to acquire. The lamp of the body is the eye. If therefore your eye is good, all your body shall be enlightened. But if your eye is evil, all your body shall be darkened. If then the light that is within you is darkness, how great is that darkness? Okay, so if your eye is evil to your neighbor, if you're stingy to your neighbor, if you won't give of the good things that you've got, then the light that is within you is actually darkness. And how great is that darkness? No one is able to serve two masters, for either he shall hate the one and love the other, or else he shall cleave to the one and despise the other. You are not able to serve Elohim and Mammon. Mammon is those things of material value. So if you are running after those things which are of material value, you will be unable to serve Elohim. As we've seen, all of his Torah, he's asking all of these things of the people. He's asking all of their mammon that they would come to him, they would draw close to him with those things, and he would draw close to them, and he would look after them. And that's the relationship that he wants with them. He doesn't want to be a God that they're just bringing offerings to and is off at a distance. He wants to draw near to people. So he says, those things that you rarely rely on, those things that you think are of value, bring them to me. Allow them to establish my kingdom. Give them to the poor. Do the things with them that I've said to do. Okay, you might think, well, this is requiring a lot of me, but that's the point in it. You're not able to serve Elohim and Mammon and be like, well, I want to keep all my stuff, but I want to serve Elohim as well. It doesn't work like that. Because of this, I say to you, do not worry about your life, what you shall eat or drink, or about your body, what you shall put on. Is not life more than the food, and the body more than the clothing? Look at the birds of the heaven, for they neither sow nor reap nor gather into storehouses, yet your heavenly Father does feed them. Are you not worth more than they? So he feeds them, and he's there in their life, and he provides for them. And they, if you like, trust in him. You know, he is their provider. And it's because of this, because you are using these things to serve Elohim. Because of that, I say to you, don't worry about these things. Look at the birds. Are you not worth more than the birds? Your heavenly Father is involved in their life. He's right there with them. That's what he's promising you through his word. Which of you, by worrying, is able to add 1 cubit to his lifespan? So why do you worry about clothing? Note well the lilies of the field, how well they grow. They neither toil nor spin. And I say to you that even Solomon in all his esteem was not dressed like one of these. But if Elohim so clothes the grass of the field, which exists today and tomorrow is thrown into the furnace, how much more you, O you of little belief? Do not worry then, saying, what shall we eat, or what shall we drink, or what shall we wear? For all these the Gentiles seek for. Those who do not know Elohim have not been brought near to Elohim. And your heavenly Father knows that you need all of these. But seek first the kingdom of Elohim and his righteousness, and all these matters shall be added to you. Okay, you could be speaking to the Israelites in the wilderness when Yehovah is saying, oh, and each Thursday I want you to do this, and then do this, and do this, and in the morning and in the evening do this, and then 3 times a year come up to me. If somebody needs some money, you've got to give them the money and all of this. If you are of the understanding that all of that is in your own dominion, then you might think, well, I'm going to be left without. But the understanding that Yehovah is trying to bring us to is that he is involved in our life, and we can rely on him for those things. But that reliance in him requires of us the letting go of all of those things into his hand and into his dominion. Do not then worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow shall have its own worries. Each day has enough evil of itself. Just do what's required of you moment by moment. If the word says it, then do it. Don't be worrying about what it's going to bring about in the future, because Yehovah is there, the invisible partner, if you like, in that deal. Proverbs 3:9-10 says, esteem Yehovah with your goods. And that's the word kavod. It's the word that's used of what Yehovah did to Abraham. Abraham was made heavy. He was esteemed with goods and with the first fruits of all your increase. Then your storehouses shall be filled with plenty, and your vats overflow with new wine. So he's saying, if you want all of these blessings in your life, this is how to bring them about. Fully step into this covenant with me. Actually trust in me. Actually rely on me to provide these things for you, and I will. Deuteronomy 7:12-13 says, and it has been because you hear these justices, these mishpatim, and have cherished and done them, the Yehovah, your Elohim, has kept with you the covenant and the kindness which he has sworn to your fathers, because you've done all these things which have been asked of you. Then Elohim does his part in the covenant. The covenant is this agreement between these two parties that both will do what they've promised. And having faith with him and entering into covenant with him is that you do your bit, you do what he's told you to do. You don't worry about what's going to happen, and then you allow him to do his bit and what he has promised, and trust that he will do it. And has loved you and blessed you and increased you, and has blessed the fruit of your womb and the fruit of your land, your grain and your new wine and your oil, the increase of your cattle, the offspring of your flock in the land which he has sworn to your fathers to give you. So he says, honor me with all of these things, and I'll honor you with these things which again are of real value. Your children, the offspring of your flock. Bring the first one to me, have faith in me with that thing, and then I'll bless their subsequent offspring. Grain and wine and oil, all of these things which are of real value. Bring all these things to me, and I will bless you with them abundantly. Deuteronomy 15:9-10 says, be on guard lest there be a thought of Belial in your heart. It's a word that means worthlessness. Saying, the seventh year, the year of release is near, and your eye is evil against your poor brother, and you give him naught. Because Yehovah, one of the things that he requires of us is that when we give to somebody else, when we lend to them, if the seventh year is the next year or the next day, whenever that is, that we would then forgive any money that had been given to them, that we wouldn't hold that debt. So Yehovah is saying, be on guard, because you're going to have these thoughts in your heart. And if you think the seventh year is near and your eye is evil to your brother, you're stingy towards him, and you won't give him the money that he needs because you know that the next day you're going to have to forgive it. If you've got that thought in your heart, then you've forgotten that whole deal, that you're in covenant with Yehovah, and he's there. He's the one who provides everything for you. You're not providing anything for yourself. All you're doing is you're having faith in him and using your goods and your abundance to bless him, to build his tabernacle, to bring offerings to him. And he says, do this, and I will bless you. And he shall cry out to Yehovah against you, and it shall be a sin in you. You shall certainly give to him, and your heart should not be grieved when you give to him, because for this reason Yehovah your Elohim does bless you in all your works and in all which you put your hand, to which you put your hand. So he's saying, listen, if that person is in need, give to them. We know that if you lend to the poor, you lend to Yehovah. So give to them. Believe that you're lending to me. Believe that it's me, if you like, giving through you to that person, and believe what I have promised, that you are blessed. Believe my word. Don't just say, oh, I believe in Jesus, or I believe in the word of God, or anything like that. Actually believe in it. Bring it about into action. Believe in and trust in that promise. Deuteronomy 8:1-5 says, cherish to do every command which I command you today, that you might live and have increased and gone in and possessed the land of which Yehovah swore to your fathers. And you have remembered that Yehovah your Elohim led you all the way these 40 years. This is what he keeps reminding them. I'm with you. I'm going up in your midst. I've led you all this way to humble you prove you, to know what's in your heart, whether you cherish his commands or not. So if Yehovah brings you into a situation where you don't have much and he's allowed you to suffer hunger to see whether or not you're going to break his commands and spend his holy portion or not bring the offering that he asks of you or whatever it is, he's testing you to see whether or not you will keep his commands and you remember what he's done and you remember that you're in covenant with him. Remember that he promises to do this. And he does humble you and let you suffer hunger. I think this is a part of what my problem is with the idea of people who are prepping for the end of the world that's in Scripture. They think that what they're going to do is they're going to gather all of this food and resources to themselves so that when Yehovah brings scarcity to the land, they're going to be okay. Completely missing the point that if Yehovah wants to bring scarcity to you, he'll bring scarcity to you. Maybe he'll just smite all of the food that you've stored up. It doesn't matter. If that's what he wants to do, that's what he'll do. And if you are one of the sons, one of the ones who are exempt, he will look after you and he'll keep you through that time and he'll make sure that you're okay. That's not to say that storing up some food might not be a good idea for times of emergency, but if you're doing it with the mindset, when Yehovah brings about scarcity on the earth, I'm going to have enough, that's a wicked thought. And does cause you to eat which manna you did not know, nor did your fathers, to make you know that man does not live by bread alone, but by every word that comes from the mouth of Yehovah. This is what brings us life. This is what we live by. This is what will bring us what we need. Living by his word rather than saying, oh, maybe if I don't keep his commandments or I don't do this thing that he says or that thing that he says, maybe then I'll have enough. Missing the point entirely of what he's trying to get us to realize. Your garments have not worn out on you and your foot not swelled these 40 years. Okay? If he wants to make sure that your shoes don't wear out and you've got what you need, he's able to do that. But in that, maybe he'll make a time where you go hungry for a bit to test you, and you should submit to that, to know that he's proving you to test what's in your heart, because he is well capable of making your garments not wear out or your feet not swell on long journeys. Thus you have known in your heart that as a man disciplines his son, so Yehovah, your Elohim, is disciplining you. If you're trying to avoid what Elohim is doing by saying, no, I'm going to store up a load of food, and then when Elohim brings about this time, I'm going to be fine, you're not going through this process which he's saying it's important for you to go through. Thus you will know in your heart. We learn things experientially. Proverbs 30:8-9. Remove falsehood and a lying word far from me. Okay, so falsehood would include sin and all of those things which are against the truth. Give me neither poverty nor riches. Feed me my portion of bread. As Yeshua said, give us this day our daily bread. Give us enough that we need. Lest I become satisfied and deny you and say, who is Yehovah? And lest I be poor and steal and wield the name of my Elohim. So what he's saying here isn't, don't make me rich, because Solomon was already the richest person who has ever walked the earth. He's saying to him, he's giving to us a principle, okay? If you have too much, the danger is that you will become satisfied and think that you don't need Yehovah. And you don't want to have too little, because if you've got too little, maybe your mind might think, oh, I'll steal a bit of bread, because maybe I need bread. And he's saying that would be a terrible thing for me to steal and be carrying, bearing up, lifting up the name of my Elohim. Deuteronomy 8:6-10 says, therefore you have cherished the commands of Yehovah your Elohim, to walk in his ways and to fear him. For Yehovah your Elohim is bringing you into a good land, a land of streams of water, of fountains and springs that flow out of valleys and hills. Okay? Cherish these commands. He's going to bring you to this place that's going to be incredible. And all these things that you value, they're just going to be naturally abundant there. A land of wheat, barley, of vines for the olives or for the grapes, fig trees, pomegranates, a land of olive oil and honey. A land in which you eat bread without scarcity, in which you do not lack at all, a land whose stones are iron, and out of whose hills you do dig copper. Again, all these things of value. And you have eaten and been satisfied, and have blessed Yehovah your Elohim for the good land which he has given you. Proverbs 23:4-5 tells us, do not labor to be rich. Cease from your own understanding. Again, bring your understanding in line with the fact that it's Yehovah who will bring these things in your life. They'll be running about laboring to make yourself rich. Do what Yehovah requires and leave the rest with him. Do you set your eyes on that which is not? For riches certainly make themselves wings. They fly away like an eagle to the heavens. If Yehovah wants that to be the case, then it will be the case. Okay, they're certainly not things to put your trust in. You can put your trust in him, though, regardless of how much or how little you have. Just don't be running around being like, oh, I need to get all this stuff. I need to be doing this, that, and the other, which is against this word, to be making myself rich. Proverbs 28:19-22 says, he who tills his land is satisfied with bread, but he who pursues vanities is filled with poverty. A man of truth has many blessings, but one in a hurry to be rich does not go unpunished. To show partiality is not good, because for a piece of bread a man would transgress. So when people don't understand that that's the relationship, they don't have faith or trust in Yehovah, if they thought, oh, I need a piece of bread, it would be that material inducement, that tiny thing, which they would decide to transgress for. But a man of truth has many blessings. A man with an evil eye runs after wealth and does not know that poverty awaits him. In Ecclesiastes 5, Solomon says, see what I have seen. It is good and pleasant for one to eat and drink and to enjoy the good of all his labor, in which he toils under the sun all the days of his life, which Elohim gives him, for it is his portion. Further, when Elohim has given any man riches and wealth, and permitted him to enjoy them, and to receive his portion and rejoice in his labor, this is a gift of Elohim. Though it not be much, let him remember the days of his life, because Elohim bears witness by the gladness of his heart. He bears witness to who he is. So it's not saying that if you've got wealth, that's a bad thing. It's saying do not labor to get wealth, because that's not your ultimate goal. Okay, your treasure should be in heaven. You should be doing the things that Yehovah asks of you. And if Elohim gives you anything like this, all well and good. Enjoy it. It's a gift from him. 1 Timothy 6:6-10 says, but reverence with contentment is great gain. For we brought naught into the world, and it is impossible to take any out. When we have food and covering, we shall be satisfied with these. But those wishing to be rich fall into trial, fall into testing and a snare, and into many foolish and injurious lusts, which plunge men into ruin and destruction. So be content with the things that you have. Okay, if you wish to be rich, that's going to be a snare to you. That's going to lead you into testing and into trial. But if Elohim makes you rich, then all well and good. But if you've got food and a covering, be satisfied with that. Verse 10 says, for the love of money is a root of all kinds of evil, for which some, by longing for it, have strayed from the belief, from the faith, and pierced themselves through. It's that longing for money, that love of money, which is injurious, will bring about injury, will bring about ruin and destruction. If you're satisfied with what you've got, as Paul said, he was satisfied in all circumstances. If you have that, then that is a valuable treasure in itself. But if you're always lusting for and wanting money and laboring to be rich, then you'll fall into ruin and destruction. Be satisfied with the things that you need. The Elohim has provided you with the things that he provides the birds of the heaven with. Hebrews 13:5-6 says, let your way of life be without the love of money, and be satisfied with what you have, because that is from Elohim. If he's allowing you to go hungry at that time, maybe it's to prove you, to test what's in your heart. If he's giving you loads of abundance, great. But don't have the love of money. It's the love of money and that seeking to be rich, which is the root of all kinds of evil. For he himself has said, I shall never leave you nor forsake you. So that we boldly say, Yehovah is my helper. I shall not fear what man shall do to me. And that's the point. That's the thing that he's explaining all the way through the Torah. So that we look to him and we say, he's my helper. I'm satisfied with what I've got. He's the one who's given me those things. This is what he's trying to teach us. Ecclesiastes 5:18-20. See what I have seen. It is good and pleasant for one to eat and drink. I think I've just read through this scripture. So yeah, if Elohim gives you it, it's good. It's a gift from Elohim. 1 Timothy 6:17-19. Charge those who are rich in this present age not to be high-minded, nor to trust in the uncertainty of riches, but in the living Elohim, who gives us richly all for enjoyment. And he's given each person what they have, where they're at. And we're satisfied with whatever he's given us. If he gives us more, enjoy it. It's a gift from him. If he gives us what we need, be satisfied and say, Yehovah is my helper. This stuff that I have has come from Yehovah, and rejoice in that. To do good and to be rich in good works, to be generous, ready to share, storing up for themselves a good foundation for the time to come. Again, store up for yourselves treasure which is in heaven. Matthew 3:10-14 says, and the crowds asked John the Baptist, saying, what then shall we do? And answering, he said to them, let him who has 2 undergarments share with him who has none, and let him who has food do likewise. Because again, if you've got food and you're sharing with somebody else, you're not thinking, well, if I share my food with somebody else, maybe then I won't have enough food in the future, because you say, Yehovah is my helper. These things have come from him. Tax collectors also came to be immersed and said to him, Teacher, what shall we do? And he said to them, collect no more than what is appointed for you. And soldiers also asked him, saying, what shall we do? And he said to them, do not intimidate anyone or accuse falsely, and be satisfied with your pay. So to the tax collectors, he says, collect the right amount of tax. Regarding tax, in Romans 13, we're told, because of this, because all these things are brought about by Elohim's dominion, because of this you also pay taxes, for they are servants of Elohim, attending continually to these duties. Render therefore to all what is due to them. Tax to whom tax is due, toll to whom toll is due. Because all of these things are in Elohim's control, including all the money that he's given to you, the amount of tax that you owe, you happily give that up. You give to the people who he has appointed in place, because he's there making sure that you've got enough anyway. Regarding tax, Yeshua said this, the Pharisees went and plotted how to trap Yeshua in his words. They sent to him their disciples with the Herodians, saying, Teacher, we know that you are true and teach the way of Elohim in truth, and it does not concern you about anyone, for you are not partial to any man. So they come and they flatter him, but what they're trying to do is trap him. Then say to us, what do you think? Is it right to pay taxes to Caesar or not? But knowing their wickedness, Yeshua said, Why do you try me, you hypocrites? Show me the coin of the tax. And they brought him a silver piece. And he said to them, whose likeness and inscription is on this? And they said to him, Caesar's. And he said to them, then give to Caesar what is Caesar's, and to Elohim what is Elohim's. Okay, so we give to Caesar, or give to the government, or whoever else it is, what is due to them, and we give to Elohim what is due to Elohim. James says, my brothers, what use is it for anyone to say he has belief but does not have works? This belief is unable to save him. If a brother or sister is naked and in need of daily food, one of you says to them, go in peace, be warmed and filled, but you do not give them the bodily needs, what use is it? So also belief, if it does not have works, is in itself dead. So if you believe these things, but Elohim says to you, look after the poor, okay? If somebody needs food, then give them food. What good is that belief if you don't actually carry it out into action? Okay, if somebody needs food, and like I say, if you've only got enough food for you and them, and you think, if I give them this food, then I'm not going to have food for tomorrow, or whatever it is, you've missed the point. You've not trusted in Yehovah, and you've not believed the very things that he said. Perhaps you've not even understood exactly what it was that he was saying to you. 1 John 3:16-21 says, by this we have known love, because he laid down his life for us, and we ought to lay down our lives for the brothers. But whoever has this world's goods sees his brother in need and shuts up his tender affections from him, how does the love of Elohim stay in him? When I was on Facebook, I always saw things like this. People who would say that they had a need in something, and other people would post and say, oh, I wish I had enough to give you, but I don't have enough, so prayers and blessings and rainbows and unicorns, or whatever else it is that people say. But they've missed the point that Yehovah requires of us in that situation. He's giving us a test to see what's in our hearts, whether we will keep his commandments or not. If you don't have very much and you see somebody in need and you shut up your affections from them, how does the love of Elohim abide in you? My little children, let us not love in word or in tongue, but in deed and in truth, in actual belief. And by this we know that we are of the truth, and we shall set our hearts at rest before him. We'll trust him. Our hearts will be at rest. When these things arise in your heart, do not fear. If we can do these things, then our hearts are at rest. That if our heart condemns us, Elohim is greater than our heart and knows all. Beloved ones, if our heart does not condemn us, we have boldness towards Elohim. Luke 12:16-21. Tell you what I'm going to do here. I'm going to skip ahead a little bit. I think this is a previous version before I had cut a whole lot of this out. Okay, I'll include this verse because this is the point in all of these things. The commandments that Elohim gives us, where it's do not steal, do not commit adultery, they're all to do with being covetous of something else, of desiring things to be another way, of wanting Elohim to have done it differently, instead of setting our hearts at rest before him and saying, this is the way that you have made things. This is how things are, and I'm satisfied with the way things are. That's what the love of money is. It's being covetous of money. So he tells us, after all the commandments which point to various forms of covetousness, he says, you shall not covet anything, whatever belongs to your neighbor. And all of this is this decoupling from trying to do things yourself. It's all relying on Yehovah, the way that he has things and the way that he will have things, having trust in that. So Deuteronomy 8:15-18 says, who led you through that great and awesome wilderness, fiery serpents and scorpions and thirst, where there was no water, who is bringing water for you out of the flinty rock. Okay, they're reminded all the way through that Jehovah who provides for them. Look what he did when you had no water. He made water where there was none. Who is causing you to eat manna in the wilderness, which your fathers did not know, in order to humble you and to try you, to do you good in the end. You might think, oh, this is rubbish. I don't have enough food to eat. Well, maybe if that's the case, he's saying whether you'd share the little that you have with somebody else. I don't know what he might do. You've said in your heart, my power and the strength of my hand have made me this wealth, which is the problem. It's not acknowledging or remembering Yehovah your Elohim. It is he who gives you power to get wealth in order to establish his covenant, that promise that he's given you, that he will be with you, that he will lead you. All of these things are designed for us to give up on ourselves and our own understanding and leave all these things in his hand. So we'll finish on this passage of scripture. Moshe recognizes these things. He said, my presence does go and I shall give you rest. And he said to them, if your presence is not going, do not lead us up from here. For how then shall it be known that I found favor in your eyes, I and your people, except you go with us? Then we shall be distinguished, I and your people, from all the people who are upon the face of the earth. I'm not interested in this. Previously, Yehovah has offered that he will make a new nation of him. But Moshe is interested that Yehovah will be going up with them, because he realizes that is the integral component without which all of the rest of it falls apart. And if Yehovah's not with them, then they have nothing, certainly nothing of value. Shall we pray? Father, I thank you that you're involved in all of our lives, that you know where each one of us is at, and you're showing us your truth, and you're molding us to be conformed to the image of your Son. We thank you that you've made things to be good and made things to be valuable. I just pray, Father, that we would be valuable to you, to have real value in your sight, to have been created by your skill, to be the work of your hands, and to be beautiful and valuable and of worth. Thank you, Father. Amen.